Have you ever heard of a wall so vast, so deadly, that it stretched for thousands of kilometers, yet remained almost invisible? This wasn't a wall of bricks and mortar, but a lethal barrier of high-voltage electricity. This is the story of the Electric Fortress, one of the lesser-known, yet most brutal chapters of World War II. In 1939, as Germany invaded Poland, the world watched in horror. But along the border between Belgium and the Netherlands, another quieter war was being waged. Desperate to remain neutral and fend off a potential German invasion, the Dutch and Belgian governments sanctioned the construction of a monstrous fence. This wasn't your average barbed wire. This was the Dodene Draad, or the Wire of Death. Stretching over 300 kilometers, this fence was a terrifying spectacle. Insulators studded its posts, and warning signs in multiple languages screamed, "High voltage, danger of death." It was powered by local factories and power stations, coursing with a lethal 2,000 volts, 10 times the voltage in your home socket. A single touch meant instant death. Why build such a horrific barrier? Initially, it was meant to stop smugglers and refugees, but as war loomed, its purpose became far more sinister. To create an impenetrable wall against German spies, saboteurs, and ultimately an invading army. It was a desperate gamble to preserve neutrality, a physical line drawn in the sand against the tide of war. The human cost was immediate and devastating. Local farmers, unaware of the silent threat that had sprung up overnight, lost livestock that strayed too close. But tragically, it wasn't just animals. Desperate people trying to flee persecution or reconnect with family on the other side faced a terrible choice. Stories from the era tell of heartbreaking scenes, families separated, individuals electrocuted while attempting to cross under the cover of darkness. The fence became a symbol not just of defense, but of despair. The Germans, however, were masters of finding weaknesses. Their spies and soldiers developed clever methods to overcome the barrier. They used wooden ladders, rubber mats, and even specially designed insulated shears to cut through the wires. They would sometimes throw weighted chains across the lines to short-circuit a section, creating a temporary and very dangerous opening. This invisible wall was formidable but not infallible. When Germany finally launched its blitzkrieg against the West in May 1940, the Electric Fortress proved to be a tragic failure. The speed and overwhelming force of the German attack simply bypassed or neutralized the fence in hours. The static defense, this great wall of electricity, was no match for mobile warfare. The very invasion it was built to prevent rolled right over it. But the story of the wire doesn't end there. Once the Germans occupied Belgium and the Netherlands, they didn't tear it down. Instead, they turned it back on. The fence that was meant to keep them out was now used to keep people in. It became a tool of the occupation, a key part of what historians now call Hitler's invisible wall of destruction. This expanded network became a cage. The Germans repaired and even extended the fence, integrating it into their vast system of control. It was no longer just a border defense. It was an instrument of terror designed to trap fugitives, political opponents, and Jewish people trying to escape the horrors of the Holocaust. The wire that once symbolized a nation's hope for neutrality now symbolized its imprisonment. Imagine the sheer psychological terror. Living near a silent, humming barrier that could kill you in an instant. Knowing that this invisible wall was locking you into a continent-wide prison. Resistance fighters had to develop even more ingenious ways to cross, digging tunnels beneath it or using complex systems of insulated tools. Every crossing was a life-or-death mission, not just from the German patrols, but from the ever-present threat of the wire itself. The fence claimed thousands of lives throughout the war. The exact number is lost to history, but estimates range from the high hundreds to several thousand. Each victim was a person with a story, a refugee seeking freedom, a resistance fighter on a mission, or an innocent civilian who made a fatal mistake. These are the forgotten casualties of a war defined by grand battles, but also by quiet, constant, technological terror. As the Allies liberated Europe in 1944 and 1945, the electric fortress was finally dismantled. The power was shut off, the posts were pulled down, and the wires were rolled up. People who had been separated for years could finally cross the old border freely. The land, scarred by this electric scar, began to heal. Today, very little of the original wire of death remains. You might find an old concrete post in a farmer's field or a weathered insulator in a local museum. But its legacy lingers. It stands as a powerful reminder of the desperate measures nations will take in the face of war, and how technologies of defense can so easily be turned into instruments of oppression. The electric fortress was Hitler's invisible wall, a terrifying silent executioner that stretched across the heart of Europe. It's a story of ingenuity, desperation, and immense human tragedy, reminding us that some of the most destructive walls are the ones we can barely see. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into a hidden corner of history. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel. We'll see you in the next video.